What's good, everyone? Apex Legends Season 6 tips. Let's go. With the 25 health reduction across all shield types and the swap to Evo shields across the board, excluding the gold shield, the early and late game weapon meta has shifted dramatically. The faster time to kill has made early game more deadly and late game more of a poke fest to hit your red Evo. As such, in the early portions of the game, be looking towards the newly buffed Mozambique and of course, the high damage Mastiff for absolute smashing power. The new Mozambique honestly has become very viable and can crush opponents in the early game. If you land hot and find a good weapon set, don't be afraid to push hard on enemies, as now with that faster time to kill, the ease of early game takedowns has gone through the roof. The Mastiff can deal 100 damage in a shot, and if you early game find one of those things, don't be afraid to push hard with your teammates. Now on the inverse of this, when you reach the late game, you really want to work towards getting your red Evo as fast as possible. It's not recommended to be pushing end zone with a blue or a purple. Therefore, in endgame scenarios, don't be afraid to poke at range to build up the damage needed for your red Evo. A lot of the longer range engagements that would have been a high risk to go for in Season 5 are now much more achievable in Season 6 because of this lower TTK and the Evo shield changes. The risk to reward ratio shifts in the favor of the team doing the poking at range as they build up their Evos, and even if they have the chance of like a longer range takedown. The new triple take, it's pretty nasty. The crouch fire pattern paired with hip shots has made this thing an absolute beast, which transitions into our next tip: energy ammo weapons. Now, granted, it's the new sniper ammo stuff, but back in the day, energy ammo. So the Havoc, Volt, and Devo represent easily three of the best weapons in the sandbox this season. The Havoc with the turbocharger has one of the fastest takedown times in the entire game, while the Volt offers an extremely easy to control SMG that also melts opponents if you're landing your shots. It's pretty easy to control, man. And the Devo, well, what do we need to say here? The Devo gives you a massive clip with the high damage output potential. Pair this with the turbocharger and you have the melt meta trinity at your fingertips. If you have a Rampart on your team, you can boost your shots through her shields and can practically delete enemies from the server. Another change to use to your benefit is the new crafting stations. Two main tips here. The new Replicator stations let you upgrade your Evo shields 100 points for just 45 crafting points, which can be invaluable this season. A few things to note, however. While upgrading your shields, they're in the crafting station, leaving you vulnerable. Additionally, you got to be very cautious with these new replicator stations when enemies could be nearby, as the replicator stations, while crafting, telegraph big time that the station is in use. Seriously, if anybody's remotely close, they're going to see this and they're going to push in on you. This can be used on the flip side, however, for your benefit. If you got a bad drop and you don't have the best of gear, rotating near a heavily used crafting station and waiting to ambush enemies while they're upgrading armor or building out ammo is a really easy to implement strategy that can have big time rewards. I found in ranked that the Harvester location on World's Edge is an extremely high traffic replicator spot, and my squad and I have been able to successfully ambush people here. You don't camp it, but if it's on your path towards the circle, it's worth checking out. So again, very useful to be upgrading your shields, but you're extremely vulnerable. These faster time to kills has made the game much more deadly. Side note for these Evo shields too, damaging a downed opponent will not grant you points towards your Evo shield upgrade. Nothing has changed there. I've had teammates thirsting opponents really hard in unranked matches thinking this was the case. The buffed Bloodhound should be a legend you don't sleep on. Bloodhound is now, in many pros' opinion, a very viable pick with huge utility benefits for your teammates, at least in online. I don't know how it's going to play in tournament settings. Especially in Bloodhound's ult form, the amount of data you can provide back to your teammates, alongside your Eye of the Allfather ability coming out what feels like pretty much all the time now, you are going to be killing it for your teammates, man. I'm always stoked when I see somebody lock in the Bloodhound at the beginning of a match. If you're going to play Bloodhound, do note, the Eye of the Allfather ability, her Q ability that pings enemies, it's directional. It does not send out a 360-degree ping in all directions. Rather, it is a 125-degree cone in front of you that will highlight all enemies, traps, and loot ticks. Stick with your teammates. Until you have a big shield advantage, the faster TTK has made it much harder, in my opinion, to get by with a 1v3 or even a 2v3 with opposing squads. Nothing is worse than downing two opponents only to have your third player off in another area code altogether. It's tougher to have fights last as long in mid-game as they did in Season 5. So do you and your squad a favor, be close, be prepared to help in encounters, and be in the same area code. That especially goes for you ranked solo queuers, the ones without mics. You know who you are. A few weapon changes that you'll want to be aware of. The Hemlock has had reduced vertical recoil in the burst mode and slightly reduced recoil in pattern on second and third shots, so the first burst kicks less. Essentially, all 3 shots in the burst is much easier to land on your opponents, plus the time between your burst mode is less, so it fires faster and it's easier to control. At range, the Hemlock is very nasty. Also with the TTK changes, the Wingman remains very, very good if you have the aim to back it up. Another weapon change to be aware of is the removal of Precision Choke. The Triple Take and Peacekeeper have had the Precision Choke integrated with them on the start, which is why that Triple Take has become so much nicer when you pick this thing up. You also have the increased fire rate on the Triple Take, alongside an increased mag size, and the choke hop up into the weapon is there by default. Toggle select fire to enable and disable that choke. Another change that I've found somewhat useful, not as much in ranked, is Crypto. Crypto seems to be getting more picks more often now, particularly because his drone can now activate respawn and survey beacons from the drone. Doing so is instant instead of requiring that prolonged use. If you've got a player on your team who knows how to use this ability, you can definitely win a lot more games. And it's just like the Bloodhound tip from earlier. When you see a good Crypto locking in at the start of the game, be pretty stoked. Your drone also has more HP this time around. The last thing I want to mention is always pay attention to what the daily Replicator items are. At the start of a match, they will appear in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. Some days it's awful, but some days they can be very, very strong. Season 6 gives you more opportunities than ever to get the loot that you would like as a game progresses, and it gives you new strategic opportunities, like I said, to ambush opponents using these Replicator stations. Not always are these dailies going to be very worthwhile, but I have noticed squads who are utilizing the stations effectively tend to have a better kit by the end of the game and usually have red Evo. So last but not least, be very careful at end zone if you don't have red Evo. Like the shield discrepancy differences now between, let's say, a purple and a red guy, it's very noticeable. So good luck out there in Season 6. Let me know if there are any tips that I missed. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel. You can follow me over on Twitter. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you again next time.